Hello students, welcome back to the biology class. So in the last class we started the topic of concept of immunology. That means we learned about what exactly is immunity. We learned that immunity is the ability of the body to fight against the diseases or to fight against the disease causing agents, which are called generally as pathogens. We learned that the branch of biology or science which deals with the study of these components is called as immunology. And we learned in the last class that immunity is of two types, innate and acquired. And we did some of the detail. We could not complete, but we did some of the detail of innate immunity in the last class. We learned that innate immunity is called innate because it is from the point of the time of birth of an individual. So it is genetically passed from parents to the offspring, and it is present from the time of birth. And we learned that it is also called as non-specific immunity because the concept of this immunity remains same for every microorganism or for every dangerous component in the environment. So whether it is virus or whether it is bacteria or any other type of pathogen or disease causing agent, the concept of the immunity will remain same. So there is no specificity. That means innate immunity does not differ with respect to the pathogen. We learned that this immunity component is a individual is born with, and it is non-specific. And we learned that it is passed down genetically from parents to the children. And innate immunity basically includes the skin, mucous membrane, and then the cells which are present in the blood. And we learned from the NCERT that there are 4 types of barriers present in the innate immunity. So we learned about physical barrier in the last class. That physical barrier is basically the anatomical barrier, and these barriers include skin, which is a multi-layered cornified compound squamous epithelial tissue. And then apart from skin there is mucous membrane which secretes mucus to trap the microbes, and the mucous membrane also carries cilia, and these cilia work in coordination and expel the microorganism outside. We learned apart from the physiological barrier apart from the physical barrier there are physiological barriers also. We learned about temperature, that means the high temperature or fever. We learned about lysosome, which is present in all the body fluids except cerebrospinal fluid, sweat and urine. We learned that even the oil gland, even the earwax, they all trap or kill the microorganism and they repel the insects. And we learned about the pH of various body fluids. So there are some highly acidic and then highly basic, and these type of pH either kill most of the microorganism or otherwise does not allow the growth of the microorganism. We learned that these two barriers, the physical barrier and the physiological barriers, they together constitute the first line of defense in the case of human. Now then we learned that the second line of defense includes cellular barrier and the cytokine barrier. According to NCERT, the next barrier mentioned is cellular barrier. So there are some phagocytic cells which engulf microbes, and then these cells these cells include PMNL, that is polymorphonuclear leukocytes, basically the neutrophils, monocytes, natural killer cells and macrophages. And we learned some of the exceptional examples which are missing in the NCERT otherwise. We learned that apart from cellular barrier there are cytokine barriers also present in the innate immunity, and cytokine barriers are the biomolecules or basically the glycoproteins which are released from the infected cells, generally the virus infected cells, and these cytokines are basically called as interferons or IFNs. And these molecules, when they are released by the bursting of the host cell which is infected with the virus, these molecules go and target the uninfected cells and alert them and make them resistant to the viral infection. These two barriers constitute the second line of defense. Some books mention inflammatory barrier as a separate barrier, and some books mention it as physiological barrier. So anyhow, this barrier is involved whenever there is an infection or the injury. So when infection and injury occur, we learn there is redness, swelling, pain, and production of the heat. This all leads to the fever, and then there will be inflammatory response, and this response is because of histamine and prostaglandin, which come out because of damaging of the mast cells. And then temperature rises because of endogenous factors or otherwise exogenous factor. The endogenous pyrogens are called as interleukins, which are produced from the macrophages. And then if the fever is because of the toxin produced by the pathogen, then it is the exogenous factor. And then this temperature increase or this production or the accumulation of pyrogen will reach to the brain and sets the human body temperature to a higher degree. And to bring down the temperature, antipyretics are taken. We learned that the first line of barrier includes skin, the lining of the tract or the mucous membrane or mucosa layer in the epithelium. Then we have cilia, mucus, acidic pH of the stomach as well as vagina, sweating, salivation, oil, tear. These all are first line of defense. And we started this concept in the last class regarding the second line of defense, which is the non-specific defense. And we understood only this much, that there are natural killer cells and then there are complement cells. Now we are going to start with this topic for today's